Welcome back to Streaming Media East 2023 here in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm here with Daniel Alinder. Daniel and I were on a panel just a few minutes ago where we talked about a number of topics, synchronization, low latency, and that kind of thing. Before we get into a few of those topics though, the last interview I did with you was at the booth of a company who does ASICs or DSPs on PCI boards, and you were looking to use some of their solutions to do low latency AV1. How has that progressed?
Yeah, it's went very well.
Okay.
We partnered up with Netent at that time, and we actually, what we've seen since then is a lot more interest than we were anticipating for such a new thing, which it was at the time. And I mean, we even submitted it to a competition for worlds. We submitted it as the world's first AV1 low latency solution. And we didn't expect a lot of commercial interest just yet, since AV1 is still picking up, but it's been a lot more than we thought. Very nice.
So on our panel, like I mentioned, we talked about synchronization and latency and sort of the correlative nature of those. What's your take on the way that we need to sort of marry synchronization and latency?
Yeah, that's a good question, because there's actually two aspects of synchronization that we think it's good to talk about them separately. Because one thing is where our system was built on the requirement to keep all viewers in sync. So what we aim to do is always be within 100 milliseconds of each other.
Okay.
And I mean, we do video. It's a live streaming service.
Sure.
But if you look at the audio aspect, that's actually where synchronization is even more sensitive, because of just the human senses. Like if I hear audio and it's out of sync, I notice that a lot more than if I see video.
Very true. And I've worked with companies who, in the audio space, because I came out of that, and they're concerned down to just a couple word clocks, which would be if it's a 48,000 kilohertz, meaning at 48,000 times a second, they're looking at, less than, say, 3 milliseconds or 4 milliseconds before it becomes noticeable.
So
and as a matter of fact, having worked with them on solutions where we're trying to do musicians in different cities, what we found is the transport itself, ignoring what was added on the latency, say at the cards, the transport itself had to stay under 20 milliseconds, because otherwise the musicians, especially professional musicians, would feel like they were half a beat out, and that was very difficult. Now, for the average consumer, that doesn't really matter, but even the average consumer picks up the perceptibility of a non-stereo feel between two devices.
It's the stereo feel that if you have two devices, regardless of whether one is on cellular, the other is maybe connected through a VPN, what we do is we make sure that it's in sync. So that's the one type.
Sure.
Then you have, many clients have different requirements. We have, of course, auction houses that want to keep things under a second, glass to glass. But you also have others that want to synchronize with broadcasts, like television, for example. So that's the other type of synchronization. And there is actually, that's where it really overlaps with latency.
Sure.
Because it is the configurable latency. That's one of the main things that we've built into Vindral.
Well, and that is, as we go through our methodologies for testing claims in the industry, that's one of the things that we actually will recommend. So say, for instance, we want to look at multiple devices, one on a cellular network, one is a connected TV with Ethernet, maybe a connected TV with Wi-Fi. We're launching them all against the same stream, not necessarily at the same time, launching them against the same stream, and then looking to see how long it takes for them to come back into synchronization, because it's very important, whether you're delaying it for a second or half a second or 3.5 seconds to the broadcast latency, that when the experience is in a constrained space, that you see those images in sync as they go forward. Now, it's sort of, it seems counterintuitive to say, let's add some latency into it to get to that synchronization, but it sounds like that's exactly what you're saying.
That's what some require. It's their business requirement, or that's the user experience requirement.
Sure.
I got to touch about. I mean, you mentioned that you're testing things over longer time, and I'm really happy you say that. And that was actually another talk that we had here at Streaming Media East.
Okay.
Our CTO Permafrost was. I mean, basically his message is, could you please to prospective clients that are looking into different live streaming solutions, please
let it run.
Put us under more pressure.
Right.
Like, let it run. Use it through Network Shaper. Look how it performs under load.
VPNs.
Because it's always VPNs and different locations, and it always needs to retain. I mean, the requirements that we have is it's always the guaranteed latency, and also when you look at quality. We're also, I mean, that's one of the things we're looking at forward. Quality evaluation, it's super important, but not just like on a perfect network or in a lab.
Well, precisely the reason why we throw intermittent networks into the mix as well, because we don't want it to feel like a lab test. We want it to feel like what you or I would experience in the real world going forward. So what's sort of next for the company? I mean, you've done this 4K AV1. Do you expand on that? What happens?
Yeah, there's several things. Of course, there's many things going on at the same time. From a performance perspective, I will not commit to a timeline, but what we're working on right now is, of course, both the 8K. Naturally,
sure.
It's been a topic tonight or during this conference, and it's something we always want to make sure that we're ready for the next thing. So now we're moving clients from 1080p to 4K, and 8K is going to be something that we want to be on early.
Okay.
We are, of course, also looking at higher frame rates.
Sure.
Because, for example, if you have sports, but also even more in gaming, if you have like esports.
Very high frame rates. Yeah.
It is very, the content itself, the players are, and the fans, they're used to seeing this in 144 or 265. I'm not going to say we're going to do 265 because that's going to have to be decoded as well. But we want to see how far we can.
Well, that latency when you would play Donkey Kong and you'd move the thing and it would lag before Mario jumped. Nobody's seen that for years, and we don't want to go back to that sort of stuttering position as well. It's interesting that you mentioned the higher frame rates. One of the data points we're seeing too, and especially because we also deal with older gear that's donated for our charitable mission, we're actually seeing an uptick in 720p 60 or 50, in Europe. Mainly because there were devices that, while they were capable of H.264 1080p, they were sort of limited to 1080p 24, 25, 30. To elongate the life of those things, dropping back to 720p 60, which is essentially the same data rate as 1080p 25, and allowing them to experience that football match, American or European type of thing. So, all right, well, very good, Daniel. Thank you very much for your time, and have a safe travel back.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back.